Hello. Okay. Well, I have a very special episode today for you ASMR fans out there. I'm joined again with the almighty Ruben Spry.
Yep, here I am. We're in the same room.
I know,
for once, finally.
I know, crazy life. Anyway, so what are we talking about today, Ruben?
Well, we're going to talk about death metal, aren't we?
Are we?
Yes.
Yeah, we're talking about death metal. It's a death metal episode of the Heavy Subjects podcast, and this is probably the closest you're ever going to see it to being a podcast, I feel.
Yeah, to this, like, professional standard.
Yes. Anyway, so I suppose we should just kick it off straight away, Ruben. So who do you want to start with? Do you think it would be appropriate to start with Venom?
Yeah, no, I think we should start with Venom, yeah.
Oh, excellent. All right. So what, to you, why is Venom important in death metal?
I mean, you know, they're important to many styles of extreme metal, right? Especially black metal. You know, comes from the name of their second record, right? Black metal. I guess in terms of death metal, just the idea of this extreme band, because they kind of came around at the end of like the kind of like the new wave of British heavy metal scene, I think. And you know, you got bands like, you know, Maiden, Saxon, Priest, Black Sabbath kind of predated that, and then, you know, those sorts of bands, they're quite melodic and very kind of like quite fun, really, quite entertaining. And then Venom really went out of their way to try and sound evil.
Yeah.
And it's all very kind of farcical and a bit pantomime, but you know, a band at that time almost growling and you know, saying stuff like we're in league with Satan and that it was pretty extreme for the time.
Yeah, no, I agree. Like I said, In League with Satan, Welcome to Hell, and then also, you know, exploring certain aspects of, you know, the Countess Bathory and so forth, where, that probably ties a lot more into black metal. If just the word Bathory, you think black metal, but even in the context of death, Chrono's voice is almost like it's... Obviously, he's trying to go for that hardcore punk sound with his voice, like trying to shout more, but it's to the point where it's so aggressive that it becomes kind of thrashy and almost growly. Not quite a death growl, which we'll get to, but it's definitely getting there. And then the old gimmick, you know, trying to like scare people by like, especially religious people, which later bands would take further. You know, when you think of like Glenn Benton from Deicide and stuff.
Yeah.
So definitely, you know, definitely worth a mention. And also, I remember Chuck in an interview saying what was the most important band for him creating death metal, or something along those lines. I can't remember the exact wording, but he said it was Venom.
Yeah.
And that's the godfather of death metal himself. So
Yeah, absolutely.
what more evidence do you need? Anyway. So we won't go into Venom anymore. I feel like I'm going to explore Venom more within the black metal aspect due to how important they are for that scene.
Yeah.
We want to mention, before we go into the classic Possessed and Death phase of it, we wanted to just mention Slayer, didn't we?
Yeah, you know, I think albums like Hell Awaits and like Rain in Blood, they have elements that would, I think, be a huge influence on the death metal scene. I mean, Rain in Blood is one of the heaviest like thrash albums ever, I think.
Oh yeah.
They're one of the most, I guess, abrasive bands to be that well known. Like, people who aren't necessarily aware of metal know who Slayer are, or they've heard of Slayer, I think it's fair to say.
I think that's fair, yeah. Slayer's definitely one of the most well-known bands within the more extreme genres.
Yeah.
And I suppose when it comes to thrash, Slayer's kind of what you call the borderline part, where it kind of gets so heavy you start kind of questioning, like, if it gets any I feel like when I listen to Slayer, if it got any heavier, it wouldn't be thrash. It would go beyond that. However, I don't think they quite edged it enough to be outside of thrash either, which is when we get into their bands like Possessed.
Yeah, no, Slayer, they're definitely thrash metal.
Definitely, 100%.
Yeah.
However, you can see how it influenced a band like Possessed, if you get my drift.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Anyway, I feel like that's just kind of a brief proto death right there, but we're gonna have to go into actual death metal. Kind
Yes.
of put a death metal with Possessed. I feel that's the first band we need to mention within the genre.
Yeah.
So, Ruben, is this the first ever death metal album or not?
Yes, it is.
Bold. I like it.
No, we always argue about this on the other show I do with my friends Chris and Mike from Crushing Sounds. They are adamant that it is not death metal, but Seven Churches by Possessed is death metal.
What, purely? Or would you?
I would just say it's death metal.
Okay.
It's heavy as fuck. Like
It is heavy, yeah.
Yeah. And someone, it was Mike was trying to argue like, oh, it's got thrash metal vocals. Like, no, it hasn't.
Okay. Do you want my opinion, or do you want to carry on with it just to kind of enforce your opinion more?
No, I want to hear yours actually.
Oh, okay. You want to hear mine?
Yeah.
Well, I feel like for me, I call Possessed proto-death. It's like, I wouldn't call it death metal in its purest sense. However, it definitely has the characteristics of death metal. I feel like for a band to be death metal, it has to have enough characteristics to be labelled within that genre, and I feel like that's what Death, the band, has enough characteristics to be labelled it. I feel like Possessed don't carry a lot of the characteristics, ain't quite enough of it to be purely death metal. I will call this a death thrash album. So when we talk about like the extremist sides of mixing death and thrash together for some bands, I feel like this is kind of like the first or the original death thrash band. So I definitely think they're death metal, but I don't think they're purely death metal. Does that make sense? I feel like it's death thrash. I feel like Death is the first ever purely death metal band.
So if Seven Churches is a thrash metal album, then it's got to be the heaviest thrash metal album of all time.
Oh yeah, it's not purely thrash. Like this is what I want to say. I don't think it's purely thrash.
Yeah.
I think it's thrash death. Like that's the distinction I'm trying to kind of convey. Where if I call it a thrash album, I feel like I'd be kind of lying. But if I feel like I'm calling it a death metal album, I'm kind of lying too. It's kind of in this really odd borderline between the two, and I just feel like it's worth mentioning that it's important in death metal, and I also think it's definitely got enough characteristics to kind of recognize the death metal within it, but it's also got enough thrash characteristics to kind of still be called thrash too. Does that make sense? I'm trying to be diplomatic about this. Am I being too diplomatic?
I think one thing we can agree on though is it is bloody good.
Oh yeah,
The
fantastic.
album. It's a masterpiece. It's one of my favourite metal albums, probably of all time.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think, obviously, I have to point out that it was the singer of Possessed. I can't remember his name. It's gone out of my head. I'm sorry. Jeff something, isn't it?
Becerra, I think was his name.
Yeah, isn't he? Didn't he get shot? Isn't he like in
Did
a?
he?
The singer from Possessed, isn't he in the wheelchair?
No, I knew he was in a wheelchair. I didn't know it was because he got shot.
I think it was because he got shot. You know.
Oh wow.
I think he was. I don't know why he got
Damn.
shot. I can't remember, but I think I might be wrong. I feel like I should Google this.
While you're googling that, though, another fun fact: their guitarist Larry Lalonde was later in Primus. So,
well, there
you know, when Les Claypool was putting that band together, it wasn't necessarily like who's weird. It was just who's really talented, and he's a really good guitarist.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So what does that say? 1989 Armed.
Hang on, I'm just looking this up. We really should have done. I feel like I should have done a bit more
I don't know
research
how we
here.
missed this. Yeah, it says he was shot in.
Yeah, it was. It was
1989.
Shoot. It was shot. I couldn't get my words up.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, not laughing about him getting shot. Obviously, that's awful.
But he's still up there performing and growling like a demon from the depths.
Oh yeah, for sure. And
Which is fucking cool.
yeah, no, it's
Yeah.
awesome. I think he's a fantastic singer, and the fact that he managed to push forward from the injuries to keep going with his career is quite phenomenal, really. And I do believe that though there are demos of this. Actually, I will get into that when I get to Death, but I feel like it's worth noticing that Jeff did coin the term death metal itself, didn't he?
Yeah.
So I think that's worth mentioning within the progression of death metal. That's why I feel like not calling them death metal is wrong, but I feel like calling them pure death metal is also not quite true either. Does that make sense?
I suppose that's fair. I think for me it's just so heavy when I listen to it, and it's still, you know, songs like The Exorcist and, you know, the song death metal
Well, yeah, of course.
still hit me like a ton of bricks.
Oh yeah, the Exodus one's a fantastic song. Wait, I love that song.
Yeah.
It's so good.
Featuring Mike Oldfield.
I wonder if he consented. Anyway, I do feel like it's important to understand that this album really pushed the game forward within the genre, and I feel like most people can agree with that.
Oh yeah.
Exactly, Mike. That's it. That's why we're good friends, Ruben. And obviously, leading into the godfather of death metal, Chuck, and his band Death.
It's a good name, isn't it?
What, Death?
Yeah.
I think for a death metal band, for sure.
It's pretty to the point. They sound like the name when you listen to them. So
you can have definitely on that, can't you?
yeah, deadly death metal.
I feel that going into Scream Bloody Gore, the first Death album, though it isn't the best Death album, don't get me wrong, it is a fucking still good album, and also a fucking important album for the genre, as you can probably agree. I just feel that reason why I call Scream Bloody Gore the first pure proper death metal album is because I feel like it carries a bit more of characteristics of what death metal is, or compared to Seven Churches. That's purely why I go for that opinion. However, not saying Possessed isn't death at all either.
Yeah, I think, you know, with an album like Scream Bloody Gore, it's like the first kind of three death albums, I think it's fair to say. It's a lot more, I don't want to say primitive, it's a lot more straightforward than what they would go on to do, which was bordering on like progressive death.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Technical death metal, right? But you can hear, like, you know, like the leads in like Zombie Ritual. That opening lead riff is very indicative of what Chuck Schuldiner would go on to do.
That's a really good point. I like that point.
It's a very heavy, just slamming album, I think. Scream Bloody Gore. And the artwork is gorgeous. It's just classic, isn't it?
Oh yeah, the artwork is probably one of the biggest things that sticks out to me when it comes to that album. And I like the intro Infernal, so you know, it brings you in with a slow, heavy intro, slowly sucking you in. Just fantastic. Yeah, so I just feel like this does carry more of the elements of death metal, and I feel like Evil Dead's probably my favourite on that one.
It's a good one. It's a really, really good one.
I feel like it's the generic one to say, but it's still fantastic.
I'd probably still say Zombie Ritual.
I think Zombie Ritual is great.
Yeah.
I agree. I can definitely like respect that as a decision. I feel like, though, I want to mention when there were Mantas. Is it Mantas?
Yeah.
When they were doing demos, and you can get demos from as early as 1984, and he was still doing the Chuck Death Scream, and that was before Possessed created Seven Churches.
So Chuck invented death metal.
Well, that's up for debate, but yeah.
I think he did.
I think he did. I'm not saying he did, but he did.
So it's interesting because while we're on that subject, talking about the elements of death metal, what are the elements and characteristics of death metal? What makes a piece of music go beyond thrash and become death metal? Because I do feel like death is a progression from thrash.
Well, obviously the biggest difference to me would be the vocals. Right?
Yeah.
The death growl, is known as. I feel like with thrash, it wasn't really screaming. It was what you call like shouting. It's more like punk, right?
Yeah,
it's more like just shouting. Where death growls are more. It's a specific technique.
Yeah.
Using your like false chords or whatever, and creating a very demonic growl. Whether it's audible or inaudible, depending on your band, it's still characteristics by that technique. Where I feel like punk is still got some. You can kind of still hear some form of melody in the voice, despite the fact that it's shouting.
Yeah.
I think death growls are just a void of melody to a degree.
I think that's kind of the point. I mean, you know, as these death growls or harsh vocals of any kind really kind of developed, bands like Possessed and Early Death, they're still kind of, you can hear what the songs are about, the words and the lyrics, you know. And then you kind of get to the point around sort of like Tomb of the Mutilated by Cannibal Corpse, Left Hand Path by Entombed, which we'll get to those albums in a bit,
Of course.
but where the vocals just become unintelligible. But that's kind of part of the appeal, I think.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and then you have 6 Feet Under, which is just another level of incompetence.
Yeah, they're quite they're quite infamous. I feel 6 Feet Under within the scene.
Have you heard their cover of TNT by AC/DC?
Once.
Once is enough.
Yeah, I feel like I don't need any more than that.
Yeah.
I want to stick to Death still, because I do
Yes.
love Death, and I feel like we should get through all of Death. Then we'll go back to more, other bands that are important within the scene.
Yeah, cool.
Obviously, you want to go into Leprosy after Scream Bloody Gore. Oh my god, they just take it up a notch, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's one of those where it's like, it's not a drastic step forward, but it just kind of takes it that bit further.
Yeah.
A song like Pull the Plug, to this day, is still one of the heaviest songs going, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do feel like when Bill and Rick Laws joined the band, I feel like they did push it into a further cementing Death as death metal, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
For sure. And like you said, that's obviously a great song you mentioned, and I feel like it's to this day still one of the most influential death metal records out there, especially in pure death.
Yeah, it's an essential one to own as well. If you're into death metal and you haven't at least listened to it all the way through,
Yeah.
then you're not really into death metal, really.
No, I agree. It's just like it's definitely what you call like your 101 starter kit album of death metal.
Pretty
really.
much, yeah.
Great, and obviously the classic album cover with the guy with leprosy.
Yeah, another great cover.
Yeah,
It does what it says on the tin.
I can always remember that guy's face for some reason. It's always engraved in my head.
Yeah.
You know. And then going into spiritual healing, quickly, because obviously, though we would like to talk more about death probably in its own video, we don't want to talk too deeply into it for those, because we can always say that for another video, but I would like to discuss enough about them. Spiritual healing, yeah, so this is like, I feel like the point where Chuck abandoned the gore aspect of death.
Yeah, he definitely started trying to write more, I guess, kind of socially conscious lyrics, and went a bit beyond just writing about zombies and people being cut in half by chainsaws and stuff.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like they did it at the right time too, because I felt like at this point, death metal was, the gore aspect of death metal was kind of being way overused, and to the point where by the time it got to the early 90s, in my opinion, no one necessarily have anything against the gore aspects of death metal. It was kind of getting to the, it was getting a bit old eventually. I think like Chuck knew that he had to kind of change the idea to keep the band more fresh, because it gets to a point where it kind of gets a bit ridiculous. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, the most infamous band that kind of have these gory album covers and ridiculous song titles is Cannibal Corpse, right?
Yeah.
But every time they bring out a new record and I see the cover, it doesn't seem shocking anymore.
Yeah.
Like an album cover like Butchered at Birth is horrific to look at.
Yeah,
it's still
definitely
shocking now, I think.
Oh yeah, it's definitely, it evokes like
Ugh.
cringe. It's almost cringe. Like,
Yeah,
gore.
because I like Cannibal Corpse quite a lot, and I think they're
Oh, I
fun,
love them.
But the image and the lyrics is bollocks. It's just nonsense.
Yeah. Like obviously, I know Corpse Grinder is one of the nicest guys you can meet, but I feel like Chuck abandoning the gore was a really good move on his part, and I feel like his ability to critique social ideas is very, very spot on.
Yeah.
And obviously, Spiritual Healing's probably the only one that really has a proper social critique in the Death albums, I feel. As we will see a different lyrical shift, which we'll get to in Human. But I would also add that James Murphy, after Rick Ross was fired, I suppose. Is that the word he was fired, maybe? But
I think so.
because he was also aided Obituary in his in their albums too, which we'll get to. But album, I should say. However, I feel like his guitar did add more of a melodic edge to the band when he came in. I don't know if you think that.
No, I agree. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so we'll go into Human,
Okay.
1991, and again, Another stylistic change for the band. Again, I feel like the theme takes on more of a deep philosophical lyrical approach, which we'll kind of see continue throughout Dev's discography until at the end, where it's more internal philosophical approaches to his lyrics, where there might be some form of social critique, but it seems a lot more philosophical based, if that makes sense. So I feel like obviously the other big difference here as well is more of a technical progressive elements to the band. This is where they took that direction, and I feel like cementing Chuck as a phenomenally good guitarist at this point.
Yeah, definitely. Just an incredibly gifted composer, and just some of the songs, just make you go like, "What the fuck?"
Yeah.
Why would you think of that kind of rhythm to play?
Yeah, like I love Lack of Comprehension's fantastic.
Yeah, I was just about to mention that one. Yeah.
I know it's like probably the biggest song on the album, but it's still a phenomenal song. I think moving into individual 4 patterns, which I also quite enjoy from 1990. I got it down here, 1993. Obviously, I feel like the big one for me with this album was Gene Hogan being introduced, because he's a phenomenally amazing drummer.
Yeah, there's a reason he's been asked to join so many bands over the years. He's just absolute machine.
Yeah, definitely. And I feel like Chuck definitely had a more angrier feel to his lyrics, but a lot of people may I think his manager contributed that to him being angry with him at the time and having arguments with him, and maybe it showed in the music.
I heard about that. Yeah.
I don't know exactly what happened. I only know like briefly what happened, but I feel like that does show in the music a little, to me personally. Obviously, I love The Philosopher as well.
Oh, of course, yeah.
Again, it's still generic one to think of, but fantastic. However, I do feel that Gene Hogan is a fantastic drummer. I feel like some of the production lets him down a little bit. Because it's a bit muddy and the guitars are very complex, which are amazing. Sometimes you can't really notice the greatness that Gene Hogan has in his drumming, and also didn't really give him enough room to really, showcase what he's capable of. Where I feel like when we go into Symbolic, that's the opposite. I feel like Symbolic, because I feel like individual 4 patterns took on what I call sort of a more complex guitar aspects, and with muddier production, like I mentioned, kind of drown out the drums a bit more, and the drums were a bit more limited what they could do. I feel like Chuck purposefully made the guitar simplified in this album to give Gene a bigger say-so on what's going on. It's almost like the drums really lead this album more than anything else. I mean, the guitar's still amazing. This is not a critique on the guitar. I feel like Symbolic's guitar riff is fantastic, even though the fact that it is simple, because it really utilizes the mode's fantastic, especially in Phrygian. But I just feel that Gene really, really shines on that album. The double ride actions he did on that album are still some of the best things I've heard on an album. Drum wise, I think we can kind of agree on that. The way, the intro, the Symbolic has this sort of the way it trips. The way the drum snare trips over it itself, kind of making you feel a bit on edge, and then when the vocals come in, he just goes linear again. So it's like he knows when to strip back, but he knows when to come in crazy at the same time.
I mean, that's two musicians and composers, when they've worked with people, they know how to compose a good musical piece for an ensemble, as opposed to, I guess, it was maybe someone like Dave Mustaine, who was just all about the riffs and solos.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I feel like it was more centered around Dave, though, wasn't it? Where,
I mean, it's his band, I guess.
Yeah, nothing like that. I mean, I know it's technically Chuck's band, but I feel like Chuck and Gene really, really listened to each other and worked together. I know they had more time to work together, too, with this album, because I remember, I don't know who mentioned it, but someone did mention that he had more time to rehearse and practice before the album recording was Symbolic. So I can kind of see how that really pays off, because it sounds like no one's above anyone. They really are listening to each other and working together, and that's why I feel like this album is very, very, very good.
You just get the sense that, like, whenever those two work, either together with someone else, like when Gene Hoglan, him and Devin Townsend wrote most of the Strapping album Alien together, and you can tell they just have so much respect for each other because there's no one overshadows the other. And it's the same with this Death album as well.
Yeah, it's a fantastic point, actually. Very, very beautifully put, I think. Obviously, we'll have to get to Devin Townsend because I know you've been itching for him.
Eventually.
I'll just obviously end up with Sound of Perseverance, the last one. And fuck, like, amazing.
It isn't... Yeah, it's not the best Death album.
No.
It's not the best death metal album. It's one of the best metal albums, period.
Yeah,
I mean, it is my favourite album by Death, but that's just me.
It's
personally.
actually my second. However, it's got my favourite song by Death, which is kind of weird. So I feel like my favourite song is Flesh on the Power of the Hose, right?
Yeah.
Fantastic song.
Absolutely.
But I feel like Symbolic is my favourite album.
That's fair. I mean, Symbolic is full of bangers.
I mean, to be honest...
Crystal Mountain.
Yeah, Crystal Mountain's fantastic.
Iconic, yeah.
I love Crystal Mountain. And obviously we have to kind of point out that Voice of the Soul is one of the probably best instrumentals of all time.
Oh, yeah.
So, and it was the album that got me into Death. Like, when I first discovered Death, it was this album that got me into them because it's probably the most popular one of theirs. So, you know, I feel like it's probably my second favourite Death album, don't get me wrong. But, yeah, I just feel like Symbolic just slightly edges it. I just love the drumming in it, and also Painkiller is a great cover. Like, probably one of the best covers I've seen from a death metal band.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anyway, I feel like we should leave it Death because I feel like I've been rambling on about Death because I love them. But we would like to do a video on that, I feel, at some point to kind of talk more in depth about
definitely.
Chuck and the rest of the band. We should go on to other pioneers within the genre, especially within this scene. What do you think, Rubes?
I think we should talk about the band that was after that grindcore band on that list there. Because this
one.
Because we definitely rehearsed this, haven't we?
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is definitely rehearsed.
Totally. But why don't you talk about Nihilist? Because I didn't actually get to listen to Nihilist. I couldn't find them. I had trouble finding them. So why don't you talk about this this album, which is apparently called Premature Autopsy?
Classics.
So murder, then.
Yeah. It's just a fancy way of putting it.
It's a good name.
So I felt like Nihilist, kind of the same thing with Morbid. Because obviously Petrov was a Morbid, but Nihilist is kind of what would become Entombed.
Okay, right.
That is basically before Entombed was Entombed. But
okay.
So obviously making this makes the band quite important because obviously it's a demo from 1988, quite early in the death metal scene, and it is essentially just pure death metal. However, it doesn't have the classic Swedish sound that we would hear from the band Entombed with the buzzsaw. However, it's definitely fucking death metal. Yeah. However, I feel like it's important to point out that Nick Anderson, in his relationship with Johnny Hedlund, I think that's his name. I can never pronounce it very well. Yeah, it was coming quite acrimonious within the band, and basically he deliberately split the band as a way of parting ways with him specifically, and then the rest kind of went off to make Entombed, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that does make sense. Yeah.
Which is obviously important for the death metal scene, because obviously Entombed is probably the most important one in the Swedish death metal scene, in my opinion, because they started the buzzsaw tone, which is what it's characterised by mostly anyway. And obviously Entombed ended up later making the death and roll sound, which they don't call it themselves, but people did call it.
Yeah.
So I feel like Nihilist is important to mention just as a sort of incantation of what will become the Swedish death metal scene. And obviously we got to put it kind of interesting that death metal had kind of like simultaneously almost came out of two places at once, which was Stockholm and Florida, which I find quite interesting.
Yeah.
In 1987,
although,
that is.
I guess if you extend it to just extreme music in general, you'd have to argue Birmingham.
True.
with like Napalm Death, because I absolutely agree that Scum is not a death metal, it's grindcore.
Oh yeah, fully.
The album they did after that, was it the third album? Harmony Corruption. That's death metal.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Well, it may be grind elements as well still, but
Yeah,
definitely.
it still sounds disgusting, but the production on Scum is like purposefully horrible.
Yeah,
You listen to
definitely.
it and it's just grim.
Well,
It's the sound of bins.
I suppose if you want to go even further back, you can also mention bands like Bathory in 1984.
Yeah,
Because you think of
yeah.
Bathory and then 1985, his first two albums, which would be before Napalm. I think like they were important too for the extreme metal, especially because obviously coming out of Sweden. It also makes sense as well, because like Bathory coming out of Sweden and then like other extreme acts coming out of England and America too, kind of makes sense that it all happened around those areas,
Yeah.
I suppose.
I think you got the shirt on. I think Celtic Frost are definitely worth mentioning as well.
Yeah, I want to mention them in the black metal for sure. I feel like they're the most important, and they're more important in that genre than I say death. But they did have the hallmark within all extreme metal. I feel. I mean, the fact that Course to Death, the album Course to Death by Obituary, has literally a Celtic Frost cover, kind of tells you what you need to know.
Yeah.
But we will get to that. But I want to mention Entombed since you've already mentioned Nihilist. Because obviously the Nihilist demo is muddy as fuck and it's a bit primitive. However, Left Hand Path Entombed is when we kind of really see what we would know to be the Swedish death metal sound, despite the fact that it was a few years after that it came out in Stockholm. Have you heard this album yet?
Left Hand Path by Entombed?
Yeah.
Yes.
Is it amazing?
It's
Because
very good.
it's fucking fantastic. We obviously have to mention the infamous Metazone MT2, which is
yeah.
if you don't play all of them at 10, you're doing it wrong. Every knob has to be at 10.
Yeah.
That's the rule.
Otherwise it doesn't work.
Even like the guitarist, was it?
They should just sell it without, like you buy some guitars without tone knobs.
Yeah.
They should just sell the pedal like that, just on and off, and that's it.
No, I completely
And
agree.
just the circuits are just set at 10 all the time.
There's only one way to play it. I mean, even Anderson, I think it was Anderson or one of the others. I think it was him though. If I'm not him, I'll hold up. I'm wrong. It might be someone else on the scene. But basically, he literally had all the knobs glued to 10 on his pedal. Like he didn't even he had it just glued there, so it just wouldn't. So it would make it more convenient in case it changes. So it just shows you the sound. But obviously, in itself though, it's Left Hand Path. The song itself is like one of my favorite death metal songs.
Oh yeah, for sure.
The middle section is with the synth. It still gives me chills.
Oh yeah.
Obviously, it will later become a bit more death and roll with the Wolverine Blues.
Yeah, which is also great.
Great album to mention, just for the development of death. However, they didn't really call it death and roll. I feel like other people called them death and roll.
Yeah, you often find that, don't you, when an artist pioneers a new style, they wouldn't call it that, but people start to call it, oh, it's this, now you're playing this subgenre.
Yeah.
And they're like, no, we're not. But then eventually they kind of admit it, oh, actually, I suppose it is, yeah.
I feel like how they put it to me was, I think they said it in this way, though. I'm not commenting the exact words. Basically, they said, we never really called ourselves it. We just kind of played what we want to, and it just ended up being labelled down. Just, but we don't really call it, but if you want to call it, go ahead. It was kind of like a nonchalant feel, I feel, with them.
Yeah, that's fair.
Ooh, my foot there. Clicky. Do you want to go, actually, since I mentioned them, do you want to go to Obituary too?
Yeah, I think that's probably a good idea.
Alright, what's your opinion?
Obituary. So the first album I've heard, and I've heard the second one. Is it Cause of Death, the second one? Or is that the third one? I've heard the first three.
So yes, Cause of Death is the second. The first one is Slowly We Rot, which is the debut 1989 album. Great album.
Yes, very, very good album. I mean, all three are fantastic. I really like Cause of Death.
Cause of Death is amazing.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. I feel like I want to sort of Slowly We Rot because it's the earlier one, but I want to kind of point out that this is the album I tell people that you don't have to be in low tunings to be heavy, because it's all in E standard. It's all in standard tuning, and yet it sounds fucking heavy as shit.
Yeah, I mean most of Opeth is in E standard.
Exactly.
or drop D.
And it was
So-
called on a Fender Stratocaster too, this
Yeah,
album.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
like a Fender Stratocaster in E standard, and you just listen to it, it's like, this is heavy as shit. It just shows you that to be heavy, it doesn't necessarily have to be like low-tuned 8 strings, you know? Which is fine if you're into that style, but it's just a proof that you don't have to.
I'll be honest. Every time I see someone pull an 8 string out of a gig bag, I just go, oh, here we go.
You kind of know what they're going to play.
0, 0, 1, 0, 0, 0, 2, 1.
I don't mind a bit of core, but if it's only core, I get a bit bored.
But the thing is, that sort of style, unless you're Meshuggah, or to a point like Periphery, or Animals Leaders are great, but all the rest of it sounds the fucking same.
Yeah, I feel like everyone just tried to copy Meshuggah, really.
Oh yeah.
And Meshuggah did it the best anyway, because it was
Yeah.
a bit OGs.
Yeah.
So. Anyway, going outside, we won't go too far ahead there.
We'll save that for the Giant episode. we will do eventually.
Yes. Obviously going to Coast of Death. Back to Michael Whelan again. He always pops up here.
Yeah.
Great artwork. It was originally actually meant to be Sepultura, do you know that?
Yes, yeah, it did, yeah.
Yeah. And then, but it was given to Obituary, and I don't think he was very happy with it.
Yeah.
You know. But again, this one does only album with James Murphy, who was also on Death's album, which we already mentioned as well.
Yep.
In which I was a human.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
There was one after Leprosy. I'm trying to remember which one came in order. But anyway, yeah, he was in it. However, he didn't really write any of the parts. He actually just recorded the guitar.
Okay, alright.
Apparently, the ideas he did end up having for the album were put onto another album with, which was his own album, the Disincarnate album. Have you heard that? Disincarnate, sorry.
No, I haven't actually.
Quite good. It's called Dreams of Carrion Kind. I recommend it just as a little listen to treat yourself to.
Ooh.
And obviously Circle of Tyrants. I love that. One of my favourite Celtic Frost songs, but also a really, really good cover of it as well.
Yeah.
So definitely out there. I had to mention that, and obviously Chopped in Half. I love the rhythm. The rhythm chopped off halves. You know, it just gets me going so good. And then going into End Complete. What's your opinion on this one, Ruben?
I mean, it's another great one.
Yeah, I agree.
Like, yeah, it's just heavy as fuck and it hits you.
Oh yeah,
It does what death metal should do.
Yeah, it's simple but effective. It's
Yes. Yeah.
Again, I have to give kudos to the album cover.
Yeah, it's just gorgeous to look at.
It really is. This and Cause of Death have like the best album covers of Obituary's discography.
Yeah, for sure.
Maybe Frozen in Time too. I don't know.
Is that the album that has Redneck Stomp on it?
Yeah,
Yeah, that artwork is amazing.
I love Redneck Stomp. It's just a good song. But yeah, Incomplete. And I love the song Incomplete too. It's chromatic done at its best, in my opinion. Well, at least one of them. I mean, maybe Master of Puppets or Holy Wars might rival it too. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But that's Fash, I suppose. Any other? So, do you want to keep with the Florida scene, Ruben?
Yeah, let's do that. Let's keep
Do you want to go
let's keep
into?
doing some Florida things.
Sorry, I didn't mean to.
Florida men.
Sorry, I didn't mean to override there. Go on. You go straight with the band that you want to mention there.
So we're going to talk about Deicide, right?
Yeah.
Who have quite very recently become one of my favourite bands.
Recently.
Yes, I knew of them for years, but I always kind of went a bit like I wasn't too keen on like the kind of that style of vocals on their first album, the self-titled one,
Oh,
where
right.
you have Glenn double tracking all his vocals, right? But behind it is this pitched down like demonic voice.
Yeah.
It's going to sound really silly, but I was thought, that's a bit too heavy. It's a bit scary. But now, when I listen to it more, I actually go, no, it's fucking cool, actually.
Yeah, it's a good idea.
Yeah. Although he claimed for years, didn't he? Oh, I didn't use any effects on that album.
Yeah.
Bollocks.
Oh no, he made it in the end.
Yeah. There's no way he just sounds like that.
Bloody Glenn. Always
what-
trying to make an image of himself, isn't
What
he?
an infamous figure, what a controversial figure in death metal. No, I mean, there's a reason why those first three Deicide records, self-titled Legion, Once Upon the Cross, there's a reason why they're
love all
so
those.
revered in the death metal scene. There's some of the song Once Upon the Cross is
I love
probably
that song.
my favourite Deicide song, but others like Sacrificial Suicide,
Bastard Son of Christ. That was that
Bastard
on the
of Christ. That's on
Bastard
the
of
fourth album,
Christ.
but I do like that one.
It's on the
That's a
fourth. I
very
can't
good
remember which
song.
album that was. See, the thing is, it's just a bit awkward for me because I got. I don't mean to interrupt, but it make a bit more sense contextually that when I got into Deicide, I was 15 and it was in 2011.
Right.
I saw them live when I was 15 as well, which was really fun at White Rabbit. That was an amazing gig,
I bet.
and it was supported by Belphegor too.
Oh, that's cool, actually.
It was fucking sick.
I-
But
Yeah. Well, I will hopefully be seeing Deicide for the first time in 2 months, actually.
oh,
From this corner, they're playing Bloodstock. Apparently, they're infamous for pulling out.
oh
Because
no,
Glenn gets stopped at the border for carrying guns or something.
sounds like
You
Glenn.
can't just bring guns into England, mate. We don't really do guns here.
Ironically, it was Belphegor that got told off and not Deicide in that gig. But I'll go into that on the black metal album.
But, you know,
About
like
the chart.
so many good songs in those first 3 albums, like Lunatic,
yeah.
God's Creation, Dead by Dawn
Dead by Dawn, I love.
is a masterpiece.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Sacrificial Suicide.
When Satan Rules His World.
Oh yeah, that one's on
Yeah,
there,
that's a
isn't it?
good one.
Yeah, I love that one. I was also funny is when I listened to Deicide, I didn't have their albums properly. What I did is when I was 15, I was given as a gift a Deicide album, but it was the best of, and that was it.
Oh, yeah, I know the one, yeah.
You know, the original best of, like the first
Yeah.
one they had
Yeah.
when they were, from the more older albums, and that had things like Dead by Dawn, Once Upon a Cross, Bastard of Christ. Is it Bastard? I think that was on there too. I think it was from up to the 4th or 5th album.
Yeah, it's on the 4th album. Deadly Lights or something.
Something like that.
Deadly Serpents and Snakes and things. Something like that.
Yeah, and obviously since I have listened to the Legion, Deicide, and Once Upon a Cross especially, because I really do like those albums, especially when I'm on like things like Spotify. But for many years, that's all I listened to was the best of. And although I really enjoyed it, it also got confusing because I was getting confused which song was on what album.
They don't really vary too much, do they?
Not really, no. So
They definitely have an established theme, Deicide, don't they?
no, not really. Yeah, I mean they're good, but I mean like the drums in the first album are so fucking tight.
Yeah.
The double bass is phenomenal.
I mean, again, like Cannibal Corpse, I love Deicide. I really, really do love Deicide, but they are a bit silly.
Oh yeah.
You can't take him too seriously, can you? It's like, come on, he's just saying whatever he thinks will offend the most people.
Oh yeah, Glenn knows what he's doing.
Yeah.
He knows what sells.
He's just being stupid, like fucking,
Yeah, definitely.
he's a knob.
Yeah. He can be. Anyway, I think that part of him wants to be a knob to give off that look.
Yeah.
I think he overdoes it because he knows he's known for it.
Yeah.
I feel like he's not much of a knob as he leads on to people to be.
He's probably alright to go and have a pint with.
Yeah, oh, I mean, yeah, you could say that. Any other bands you want to mention, Rubes? How about?
Yeah, we talk about Necrophagia.
I feel like they're important to mention. I suppose we go back to more of the creation of death metal. If we go,
I mean,
so.
I'd say it's pretty much death metal.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Season of the Dead.
I love my Dead Seasoned.
Excuse me.
That's alright.
Yeah. It's got all the characteristics of death metal,
Yeah.
similar to Possessed.
Yeah, I think it's definitely more rougher compared to Scream Bloody Gore or anything. It's more on the rough side of the Seven Churches
Yeah.
production, I feel.
Yeah,
Which is
for
not
sure.
necessarily a bad thing, just wanted to point that out. But I feel like it does have a lot of unique twists within the album, just kind of hook you in at times randomly, I feel. I think the beautiful dark intro, for example. I think it's great. Forbidden Pleasure. Great song.
Yeah.
I understand why it may be for some not quite what they need. I think I have a personal liking towards it, like an endearment, but at the same time I can understand why some people might find it a bit hit or miss.
I don't listen to them too often. I like them, but if I'm going to put on some death metal, it's going to be something a little bit more like pure death, you know?
Yeah, I agree. I feel like I can listen to them occasionally, but I would prefer other bands more often, if that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure.
Definitely. I want to go into this one actually, which was because obviously one of the big characteristics within death metal was it being combined with some genres. Famous one being doom. So death and doom was quite a common mix
Yeah.
And I know a lot of people will probably go to bands like Ribikulu, if I'm hoping pronouncing that right, because I don't know how to pronounce that properly.
It's probably. It looks like it's pronounced.
It
that
looks
way,
like
though,
it's
if you see it
pronounced.
written down. Yeah.
If I'm wrong, feel free to grill me. I'm not exactly Finnish, but I wanted to mention before bands like that, the earliest I know of, though I could be wrong, if there's any earlier ones, feel free to tell me, but the earliest example I found was a band called Goat Lord,
Yes. Yeah.
and it's dirty.
So they. That was one. It was the demo from '87, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and it is like I listened to it on the bus on the way home from work, and yeah, it is quite dirty, isn't it? The album, not like in terms of things, but it just sounds like gritty.
Oh, yeah.
It borders on black metal, I think.
Yeah, it's so lo-fi you can confuse it with black metal. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like it's clearly Death and Doom the way they're playing, but like it's so lo-fi, it's so muddy. You can
Yeah.
tell it's just in a rehearsal room with one mic.
Oh yeah,
From
like the
the
good old
80s.
days.
Yeah, exactly. Sorry if I'm interrupting, by the way. I'm a bit hyper today, on edge.
You're just so excited to see me.
I know that's it. So ginger hair ribbon gets me excited. But yeah, I was trying to point out that this is why I put that on there, just as I feel like that's important to mention.
Oh yeah.
Whether they had an impact on other bands, I can't actually say. You never know. However, I wanted to going into the Death and Doom categories. I wanted to mention two bands, very important ones, which was Derketa and Mythic.
Yeah.
Because the band Mythic does have some of the members in Mythic were also in Derketa, because Mythic was the band they made after. They got another singer in.
Yeah.
But I wanted to mention them because they were the first, technically the Derketa, however, I think like Mythic perfected it and did a much better job. It's kind of the first female-based death metal bands, and actually like fully female, like not just a female singer, but every member was.
Yeah. Which is cool because you're gonna get people going like, oh, why does it matter what gender they are? Why can't you just someone who's talented? Why does it matter? And I'm like, well, no, it doesn't matter really, but it is cool to have representation in a genre, especially death metal, which is very male dominated.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I feel like it's important to mention because though I do not feel that the aesthetic of a female vocalist doesn't really add any difference to death metal specifically that much, because death growls tend to all sound very similar. I mean, you can argue that female growls are a little bit more higher pitched, like Banshees, because they're female, but some male vocalists can do the exact same thing. Look at Sound of Perseverance, right?
Yeah.
It's like very screechy, so but even males can still do the same aesthetic. It's just I wanted to point it out as a representation, because I feel like death metal gets this a rep for being very male. It's basically a sausage party.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, that's fortunately now turning around a bit. I wouldn't necessarily call them death metal, but I feel like since Ginger came around, when the song Pisces went viral,
Oh yeah.
their vocalist Tatiana, there was just an explosion. There was always bands of women and heavy bands of women for decades. They've always been there, but that was when they kind of exploded into social consciousness. It was like, oh, women can be heavy too.
Yeah.
It was, yeah, we all knew this already. You're just becoming aware of it, the mainstream, right? And then since then, we got bands. Spirit Box are really big right now.
Yeah.
And they're cool. I don't mind them. The big one right now for me is Crypta.
Oh, Crypta.
They're Brazilian all-women death metal band.
Yeah, they played here recently, didn't they?
They did. And I'm seeing them at Bloodstock as well, and I cannot wait because they're fucking awesome.
Yeah, and I think another one to mention would be Nemophilia, seems to be getting big too. Have you ever heard them as well?
I've not heard of them. But
They're from
I should
Japan.
check them out. Oh, really?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's why I probably know them.
Ah.
Anyway, going back to Derketa and Mythic, I feel like this is a time frame where women weren't really known within the scene.
Definitely not. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like they kind of went underappreciated. Like, I feel like, yeah, we now know it's big now with bands like Ginger and so forth, but we have to give credit to who paved the way for those bands.
Because it's probably really difficult for them as well. I mean, I've heard friends of mine who happen to be female and are in heavier bands. They will go to a gig and the guy at the door will be like, "Oh, have you got a wristband?" "No, I'm in the band." what, you like the merch guy or something? It's like, no, I'm the fucking singer. Like,
Yeah.
let me in. I'm in the band.
Do you know what it's like being in the
Are
metal?
you like the guitarist boyfriend or something? It's like, fuck off. Girlfriend, sorry.
I used to get annoyed being in Emma Line sometimes when people will always with especially with Jasmine. Not annoyed at Jasmine, sorry. I must say I was annoyed with people's reaction to Jasmine being the drummer.
Yeah.
It was always the focus. It's like, oh my god, you got to film my drummer. Oh my god, you got to film my drummer. It's like, yeah, women can play drums, believe it or bloody not.
Yeah.
Like, it can happen, you know.
Yeah.
It's like every gig. I'm like, like I appreciate you like in being enthusiastic, but like, it does exist.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but genuinely speaking, I feel like I want to just I want to put some bands in the list that give love to some of the females who are paving the way for the females now who are really in the mainstream of metal. I feel like I want to give sort of the voice to the underdog almost, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
So I wanted to point these two bands out. Dirketa, I do think the Dirketa is not as good as Mythic. However, and I find myself not listening to them as much as Mythic. I think I listen to Mythic a lot more. I feel like I prefer the album, but they technically were first, I suppose. So I wanted to mention them, and yeah, it's very raw. But anyway, it's still done well. It's just a lot more. It's a lot more raw. And then going into Mythic, which oh my god, I love Mythic so much.
They are good, yeah.
Going into the morning of the Winter Solstice EP, it's Death Doom at its finest. It's like one of the finest forms of it. I believe.
Yeah, I think for me, I'd probably say. I'm getting confused now. I think I'm thinking of Tiamat.
Oh, Tiamat, yeah. Fair enough.
Well, there was another band with a female singer. They did that kind of like Death Doom style.
Yeah, there's a few.
Yeah.
I will go into them. Force Hammer.
Yes, Thor's Hammer. Yeah, really. Yeah.
I'll get into it after Mythic. I just
Okay.
wanted to give shout out to Dana Duffy, the vocalist
Yeah.
of Mythic, because she's a fantastic vocalist and guitarist. Like she
Yeah.
plays both, and she did do another band after Mythic broke up called Demonic Christ, which is I think still going to a degree. I've got
Right.
one of the songs on the compilation CD, which this is how I first found out Mythic. I found Demonic Christ by accident first.
Wow.
On a all-female underground metal CD from like the 90s.
Oh, nice.
And I thought I found Force Hammer too, but that led me into finding Mythic, which was before Demonic Christ. So definitely worth giving both a listen, I would say. Just like Mythic was first, so I feel like it's more important to mention them, generally speaking. Anyway, I'll go into Force Hammer. What did you think of Force Hammer?
That's for me probably my favourite like Death Doom that I've come across. Maybe
Nice.
second to Ahab.
Oh, Ahab is great, actually. It is fantastically done, and obviously we have to point out that it's not only is a fantastic Death and Doom, it's also got a very heavily Viking themed, which kind of.
Yeah.
I'm not saying they were the first one that had Viking themes, because obviously Amon Amarth was probably a little bit before Force Hammer, because they were doing demos still and EPs. Amon Amarth, but the fact that it was a very early Viking death metal band, full Viking metal band, and female fronted, I think is important to mention. Obviously, Runhild from Force Hammer is from Norway, though the band itself was American. She was 17 and she was studying in university at the time in America. However, she was Norwegian.
Right. Wow.
And she went back to Norway because I think she was an exchange student. I might be wrong on that. And she went back to Norway after like 6 weeks of doing like maybe 2 shows on the EP, and then they never did anything with her again.
Wow.
The band carried on though themselves, but she wasn't in it anymore.
Oh, that's a shame.
And they changed the name. It was just a shame. However, she went on to get a PhD in cell physiology,
Okay.
so she's a doctor now.
Well, that's something.
So not only is she a great vocalist, but she's also a PhD. I mean, that's pretty good repertoire, I feel, in your arsenal behind you.
Yeah.
So, and she was 17 when she did it, which is fucking amazing
Yeah,
too,
it is,
like
yeah.
for the young age.
Yeah.
So I had to really shout her out there. And I wanted to mention one more female Death Doom band, which is Baba Yaga. Why? Because I found them randomly, and I mean, yeah, this is the only thing they've ever done. And yeah, the only copy I found of it to listen to had 600 views, so it's literally underground in its purest form.
Oh, yeah.
But however, not only is it Death Doom with a female vocalist, it's also got elements of psychedelic stoner doom in it, almost, and I
Oh,
quite
cool,
enjoyed that.
Yeah.
So I feel like not saying, I don't know if they were like the oldest band I can think that did Death Doom with a more of a psychedelic stoner doom approach with the death.
Mm.
I feel like that's worth mentioning, and it's a little pleasure I just found. So shout out to them. Anyone else you want to go to, Rubes?
In terms, like, what sort of specific scene do you want to kind of stick with? Do you want to keep talking about Death Doom or?
Yeah, we can stick to Death Doom.
Yeah.
What about Rippy Kulu? I think
yeah,
that's
no,
how
I
you
like
pronounce
them.
them.
Yeah.
What was your opinion on the album when you listened? Like, what did you think?
It was very cool. Another one I listen to on the bus on the way home from work. Because
Nice.
I do most of my listening to music, either when I'm playing racing games or if I'm sat on a vehicle. Because I don't actually drive myself, so I'm normally don't have to pay attention to what's going on the road. So I just put headphones on and just kind of, just zone out and listen to just. I'm normally in the back of the work van, just.
Nice. I get that. Sorry. Yeah, no, it's good. I wanted to mention as well that I think this may be the first ever death metal record. I know it's Death and Doom in its purest form, but it was the first ever, I think, death metal record to be in their own language, as in it's in their native Finnish language. It was,
Yeah.
I think it's the first one I found that isn't English, which I'm not saying is a massive thing. However, it shows that you didn't have to know the English language to be in a death metal band, which I feel like made it more globally accessible to other people.
Yeah. I mean, all those kind of like Scandinavian languages, like Swedish and Finnish, they are so fascinating to listen to.
I'm really sorry, Ruben. Finnish isn't Scandinavian.
Is it not?
It's a Uralic language, so it's kind of Estonian.
Oh, okay.
Scandinavia.
Okay,
I don't mean. I'm sorry. I know I'm being pedantic, but I know there's going to be a Finnish guy listening to this, and it's going to be like it's not Scandinavian.
No, but it's important we get that right, to be fair.
Yes.
Yeah. But okay, fine. Those kind of languages, they're so fascinating to listen to, and it just proves the point of like when someone kind of outside of this scene listens to like death growls or whatever and goes, we can't understand what they're saying. What's the point? You don't need to.
Exactly.
It's sonics, it's sound, it makes you feel a certain way, then great. There are plenty of like, I don't know, songs with clean vocals, you can't understand every single word.
True. I mean, look at rap.
Yeah, do kids really know every word to Rap God by Eminem? Probably.
There will be a kid out there somewhere.
There's someone out there who's learns it all. But then they
True.
slow it down on TikTok anyway.
Yeah,
So
but-
it's-
I suppose there's a kid out there who probably knows the lyrics of Cannibal Corpse, though, to be honest. I guarantee.
there's someone who is a bit of an outcast, like who sits at the back of their class, who's in their bedroom with loads of like Cannibal Corpse posters all over their walls.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
I feel like if you're like really like a massive, if Cannibal Corpse are your favourite band, you've probably got some issues. I love Cannibal Corpse, they're not my favourite.
I think that might be endorsed by Corpse Grinder himself anyway, to be honest. I think that's...
Yeah, maybe.
or Alex Webster.
Or,
Anyway,
or Chris Barnes.
I would like to talk about Cannibal Corpse, but I want to mention Amorphous beforehand, if that's okay.
Okay, well, as it happens, Reagan, in my busy schedule, my flying visit through Plymouth, we aren't going to have time to cover everything on this list,
Of course.
I don't think. But I reckon we can get a couple bands in, and then we'll save the rest for a future instalment. Keep the fans wanting more. The many, many fans.
So, would you like to do it in 2 parts, or would you like to just stick to this aspect of the death metal?
Let's do it in 2 parts, shall we?
The second part's not going to be as good quality, but it'll be just as enjoyable.
Yes. Well, I have enjoyed sitting here, actually recording into a proper,
Microphone.
yeah, that's the word, yeah.
Microphone.
It's just yeah.
Micros.
Yes.
Your micros.
It's nice doing the job I do, being a stagehand, arriving somewhere and I get to use equipment that I didn't set up.
I thought I'd do the job for you. You know, give yourself
the
a
loading has
break.
been done. Brilliant.
Beautiful, beautiful. Okay, so I think we'll mention Amorphous and Cannibal Corpse and leave it at that. How's that
Okay,
sound?
That sounds good.
Okay, so I just want to mention Amorphous sticking to the Death and Doom aspect. And again, it's earlier than Ripikulu, because it is another Death and Doom album. However, I feel like Ripikulu is the first pure Death Doom band. I feel like, in my books, it's a bit less pure than that. I feel like it has Doom elements, but it's a lot more death metal orientated than the Ripikulu.
Oh, yeah,
I think Ripikulu
absolutely.
had a lot more Doom to it, being a pure Death Doom. I don't know. Maybe I'm being pedantic saying this, but I feel like Amorphous had elements of Doom, but then a lot of it was just straight up death metal sometimes.
Yeah. I mean, I like a lot of Amorphous stuff from across their discography. But that first album, though, the Corellian Isthmus. No, Isthmus.
I'm still think I'm not Mike Tyson. Eh?
That one's the most raw, like, I guess heavy album.
Definitely. I mean, depends if you class raw as being heavy. Some people do, some people don't. I suppose that's a thing in itself.
I guess later stuff that they're really known for having, like, you know, growling, and then soaring melodies.
Yeah, they
Of
definitely
course,
went
things
more
like that.
melodic. I see.
Yeah. I think
Um,
they're a great band.
yeah, I still listen to them all. I've listened to a bit of them. I just want to mention the first album because I think like it's the only one I've listened to all the way through of theirs. I'll be honest. Like the other
Oh, yeah,
songs,
yeah.
I've only ever heard like other songs scarcely. If that
Yeah,
makes sense.
like The Bees is the other one that I know. That song.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
like their most kind of popular one, I suppose.
That's the Shape of You.
Mm.
Anyway, again, Finnish Doom you can't go wrong with, right? Finland's Doom, it's fantastic.
Yep.
Let's go to Canny Corby.
Canny Corby, Cannibal Corpse. Yeah, I mean, you know, we've mentioned them a few times already in this episode, but
Whoop, whoop.
they are one of the most infamous death metal bands, right?
Yeah, they definitely got a cred to them, especially in the 90s more so. I feel like nowadays they're not as infamous as they used to be. They're more infamous at the time, I feel.
I mean, when you mention death metal, they're one of the first bands that pops into your head, right?
yeah.
I mean, due probably in big part to Ace Ventura, I think it's fair to say.
I remember that Hammer Smash Face coming
Yeah,
on.
it's
When
brilliant.
that was the first time I ever heard them.
Right.
Because I watched Ace Ventura when I was really young. I think I was like, I don't know, like 11 or something. I can't remember exactly what age, but it was
I
quite
d-
young.
I just love that now when you go to Cannibal Corpse shows, I'm hopefully seeing them in Bristol later this year. We're going to try and get tickets, and they're being supported by Municipal Waste
Oh, that sounds
and
good.
Immolation, who are another amazing death metal band. They're more kind of like tech death.
I'm not sure if I know them.
Immolation, I think they might be Israeli. I'm not sure, from somewhere like that.
I don't know.
But
So
they're really if you like Nile, then you like Immolation.
we will have to get to Nile in the next episode.
Nile are
won't
also
we?
playing Bristol soon, but I also really want to go and see Nile.
Yeah, Nile is great. I love
Yeah.
Nile. I will have to talk about Nile in the next one because I love I like them. Anyway, to go to Cannibal Corpse.
Yes.
Anyway, obviously mostly known for the infamy. Obviously, Eaten Back to Life was the first album. I feel like that was the start of the gore. However, they definitely took it further after that. But I think it's worth mentioning the first.
Yeah,
Two.
I mean, yeah, I do really like Eaten Back to Life. I think Cannibal Corpse kind of got known for being a little bit silly, a little bit like, oh, what's this song called? Like, I don't know.
Icon Blood.
Yeah, it's okay. All right, we get it. You're discussing entrails ripped from a virgin's cunt. It's like, okay, fine. It's disgusting. Okay.
And you expect it now, so I feel like it's not shocking.
definitely. So now when they release an album and it's called like, I don't know, Slaughter of the Youth or something, it's like, it's not scary anymore. But
Yeah.
Eaten Back to Life was I think a really important death metal release.
Yeah, I think it was important for the what you call like it taking obviously inspiration from the gore grind recapitulation aspect of Carcass, I imagine, and maybe even what's the other one, Autopsy from '89.
Yes.
Yeah,
with,
taking-
their first album.
Yeah, taking inspiration and then obviously other ones like Scream Bloody Gore, but then just like thinking, okay, how do we take this further? It's essentially what they were trying
Yeah.
to do.
What's the most extreme, ridiculous kind of levels we can take it to?
Yeah. I
And-
feel like that was the case with Cannibal
Yeah.
Corpse. However, here I feel like it's not fully what I would call the Cannibal Corpse sound.
No, if you wanted to show someone what Cannibal Corpse sound like, you would just play them Hammer Smash Face, right?
Yeah, sure.
And I love the album Butchered at Birth. I love the album Tomb of the Mutilated. They are among some of my favourite death metal records. I just like Cannibal Corpse. I just think they're fun. If you want to headbang, there's
yeah.
not really many better bands you could put on if you just feel headbanging.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like as well. I feel like was a Butchered at Birth. Was that in the one with Hammer Smash Face?
That's on Tomb of the Mutilated. It's the opening track on that album.
Oh, Tomb of the Mutilated. Okay, Tomb of the Mutilated. I feel like Butchered at Birth then is the one that came before, wasn't it?
Yes.
Okay, I was just making sure. I'm getting confused. I felt like those 3 stages of Cannibal Corpse. There was the eating back to life, and then Butchered at Birth was kind of like a bit more. Okay, let's take it a little bit more further especially with the album cover of Butchered at Birth. Like the album cover is really out there.
I don't think we can show that on YouTube, can we?
Yeah,
without losing all of our sponsorships that we don't have anyway.
I know what you mean on that one.
No one's gonna monetize that video.
I feel like it was like imagery wise. I feel like Butchered at Birth kind of captured the imagery, but then I feel like that's when they kind of like, okay, let's make this fucking disgusting.
Yeah.
But then I feel that Tomb of the Mutilated is when they changed the sound to what we know to be Cannibal Corpse's brutal sort of death metal sound more
it's that
than the standard
combination.
death.
Yeah, it's the combination of the brutality. At the time, it was Chris Barnes doing vocals. Back when his vocals were actually good, his unintelligible, scary-sounding death growl.
Yeah,
just
and kudos to Alex Webster as well.
Yep. Oh yeah.
Because I feel like the Alex Webster has a specific bass tone that is what Cannibal Corpse is, and I feel like the first time he had that tone properly was Tomb of the Mutilated. I like to describe it as it's like bones crackling. It's like two skeletons having sex. Does that make, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It literally sounds like two skeletons.
So
having
that
sex.
breaking Cannibal Corpse, yeah,
it's like
two skeletons banging.
Just two skeletons having sex with each other. It's just all the bones clacking together. That's literally what it sounds like
in
to
a
me.
shipping container.
And then that just kind of and then that to me is like literally the bass tone that set off basically all brutal death metal.
Yeah,
because I think of Cryptopsy and stuff kind of like got the similar tone with the bass and other bands probably. However, Alex Webster is kind of what I call. I feel like it's the ultimate death metal tone is your bass sound like skeletons having sex.
Was it the first Cryptopsy album?
Blasphemy Made Flesh.
That one.
No, I said at the same time.
Apparently, there's loads of complaints. Like the critics were saying the bass is too loud, and I'm just like, stop complaining.
No, it isn't.
The bass sounds fucking sick.
Mutant Christ has got an amazing bass.
Yeah.
Obviously, Open Face Surgery is not known for its scream. Probably
it's
the longest.
Another great title, isn't it? Open Face Surgery.
Do you know that's the longest scream I've managed to find in the death growl? Like the longest death growl scream I've managed to find. I know that Linkin Park's Giving Up is a notable one. I know it's not really a death scream.
Famous death metal band Linkin Park. I love Linkin Park. I love their early albums.
I mean specifically the screaming Giving Up in the breakdown, which is 27 seconds long, which we all know is really long. However, Open Face Surgery is 3 seconds longer than that. It's 30 seconds. Then. It's the longest I've managed to find that I've actually timed.
So if you have it on vinyl and you put the speed down, then
if you half the speed, it's a minute scream. Apparently, I heard in the grapevine from a friend. I don't know how true this is. That when he was recording, oh yeah, I heard that he blacked out while doing the recording to that song. Because the screen was just it completely voided him of oxygen.
I heard recording a Steve Vai album, the first album he appeared on. Devin Townsend did vocals on it. And there's a scream he did on that. Apparently it made his fingers go numb because his brain was deprived of oxygen.
Wow.
Yeah, which it is not good for you.
No, not really.
It's not very good doing that. That's basically like a very tiny stroke.
Very tiny. Obviously, if there's
just a little stroke. Don't worry, it's fine. I'll be alright.
Don't worry, guys. I'm not dead. I'm just unalive.
I'm just really poorly.
Yeah. Just a bit of death. I'll be alright.
Yeah, I'll be fine. Yeah.
I feel we should leave it at there though.
Yeah, no, I think that's a smart idea. I think we'll try and piece together where to pick up from. I think.
Yeah, we can do that in all the conversations in a private time. However, I think I'll leave it at Ruby, and we will.
No, it's been good. Another crushing sounds. Not crushing sounds.
Copyright.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Don't copyright
Chris.
me, Ruben.
I'm so sorry, Chris. Heavy subjects. That's it, isn't it? That's the name.
I think so.
Okay. All right. Yes.
Welcome to Backseat Bangers.
Backseat bangers. That's another one we should do. We sit in the back of a car. That's a good idea, actually. But anyway,
Backseat.
yes.
Yeah. No.
Thanks for listening or watching to Heavy Subjects podcast.
Yes.
That's the right name.
Yeah, that is the right name.
You're Reagan, aren't you? I'm Ruben.
I think so. I don't know who I am anymore.
Honestly, like 3 days on site working at a festival has just done me in, I reckon.
I agree with that one.
Yeah. 16-hour days.
I've done festivals before. It's not fun. Anyway, yeah. Well,
it is fun. It's just long.
It's not fun afterwards.
Just don't think about it. You'll be fine.
Yeah. Anyway, take care, everyone. Thanks to you for listening and watching, and I will see you on part 2 of the demake of the podcast.
Yes.
Bye bye.